Okay, it's the Tyll Show. We are back after yet another of these gruesome updates today. We're very lucky on a day like today that we have our next guest along to try and help us make some sense. I don't know, do we really? Do we ever make sense out of this? It's been going on my whole life. Dr. Christopher DiCarlo is with us. Dr. DiCarlo is an author and executive director of the Critical Thinking Project. Dr. DiCarlo says that we've stopped thinking critically about facts. I agree with him, especially when it comes to emotional issues. You say, well, that sounds pretty obvious. Well, you know, just because it's simple to understand doesn't mean it's easy to do. Dr. DiCarlo, welcome to the Tyll Show, Starcom Radio Network.
Oh, thank you for having me.
This is not rocket science, but it does require what? Not getting carried away. So in the most objective terms, how do you size up what our challenge is today through yet another one of these horrible episodes where lots of life is lost unexpectedly, and the video looks so similar that sometimes we think we're, you know, in some kind of a time warp here, but as dispassionately as you can, what are we facing here with this tragedy in Vegas?
Right. Yeah. Well, these situations, they're never easy to take. But what we can try to understand is that the way in which cultures have evolved, like ours, and within those cultures are things like guns, and those things aren't ever going to go away anytime soon. We have to understand that occasionally events as horrific as this one was are going to happen and will continue to happen. And the question, I think, comes down to, you know, what kind of a society do we want to live in? Obviously, we want one in which we're safe and secure and free, but you're never going to be able to have that 100% of the time, ever. And,
you know, you hate to say it, right, because it does come up in political debate. If you have enough income, you do much better in this area, right? You're always protected. They're always looking out for you. It's ordinary people in these ordinary situations, god-awful terrorism attacks at airports, you know,
right,
where it's kids and families. And, you know, this thing today, not that, you know, Vegas is Vegas, but you know what I mean. It's basically it's playground over there, soft target play. Horrible, the Ariana Grande. So what should we say to ourselves then? Live your life like, you know, of course this can happen to you, or do you try to not think about it because so statistically it's unlikely that it will happen to you?
Yeah. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head right there. I mean, the odds of suffering injury or death by a lone gunman such as the one in Vegas are extremely low compared to you getting into your car and being injured or killed. A lot of it comes down to whether or not do we care more for liberty and freedom, and if we do, then what are the costs associated with that?
Right. There you go. Right. That seems to me you captured very well there the zeitgeist of the most outspoken voices in our American dialogue right now.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it's always going. Half the crowd is really demanding better results. You guys in Washington or in state capitol or city hall, y'all can do better. The other crowd is throw all of you bums out because you're so bad at it. Having more of you is more trouble for us. So the freedom crowd today is going to say, don't blame this on gun control. There's no such gun control that was going to stop this today. Right. The other guy is going to say, you must be nuts. It's about time they ban these guns. And, you know, I've been on the air decades. This is not new subject matter to me at all.
No.
I was around, a fresh memory of the Kennedy assassination as a little kid, Bobby after Martin Luther King. There was an era, Sirhan, etc. There was an era where something was going to change, and it did not. And now they're glad they didn't. They're like, you see what would have happened, and no results anyway. So, what do we say if the price of freedom means this is possible because it's a lone gunman? They've been saying this since Oswald. If one
Right.
individual decides to be willing to give his life, there's almost nothing you can do. He's going to find a perch. He's going to get a
Yep.
weapon, a hand grenade, whatever the hell it is.
Or a
So,
vehicle.
right, that's the new one, right? Drive
Sure.
over them and right. So, in the face of all this, what do we say that would help us understand this is, in fact, the imperfection of freedom? This is the space between the threads of the fabric of freedom, right?
That's it. That's it exactly. And I try not to not to swing too far in either direction. What critical thinking gives us, what allows us to do, is to step back and to try to take just a sober look at what matters most to society overall. What do we really value? And horrific things have been done in terms of attacks on humanity with vehicles. Does that mean we're going to ban certain types of vehicles? Does that mean should we ban certain types of weaponry? We need to get together with both sides, those who are pro-gun and anti-gun, get them together and see where that common ground lies, and try to do kind of a meta view, a step back view, as it were, and ask ourselves, what is it that we ultimately value as a society? And since we know guns are not going to just go away, you can imagine ideal worlds. You can imagine idyllic worlds in which guns were never invented and whatnot, thought experiments, that sort of thing. But the fact of the matter is they're here, and they're never going to go away, I don't think. And so then the question then befalls us, what do we do? What do we do about it? And if we do value freedom, and we do value liberty and the right to possess these types of things, then we have to appreciate the fact that we're never going to be able to predict when somebody, for whatever reasons and for whatever causes, we still don't. Do we have all the details on the shooter? Do we know what kind of incentives he might have had? We want to almost immediately say there had to have been an underlying biological condition. Sane, normal, rational people don't do these types of actions. So we're never going to be able to protect ourselves from when brains misfire or when people act in errant ways that are in opposition to the rules and the laws and the statutes of the land. So we have to grieve, we have to be sorrowful, we have to be compassionate, and we have to move on and decide for ourselves who we want to be and in what type of society and what values do we really cherish.
Man, it is a lot. I'll tell you that. It's a heavy plate. You are something for putting it all out there that candidly, that straightforwardly. I'm raised on critical thinking. That was the big tool that we were told we had in middle school, high school, and early university. We were told you really got to be relentless with that because that's your only hope when you start with inflammatory issues. And the politics back then was the Vietnam War. It was an abortion decision in the Supreme Court. They were big, big issues, and people were trying to hold on to reason over emotion. But boy, what a tug of war this becomes. Are we better at managing someone who does present with crazy rage that they'll admit to a therapist is this is not me. But I
Right.
had 2 shots last night with Billy, and when that guy left my house, I was ready to burn my own house down and my wife in it. But I don't know what's going on with me. I'd lost my job. You know what I mean? Are we
Yeah.
better in the system? I hope of if you say that you're going to get help today, right? If you're in front of a mental health professional and you say, this is not me, but I'm having thoughts.
Hmm. Yeah, we've come a long way. I mean, the stigma has eroded somewhat with mental health. I mean, it was often seen as a deficiency in humanity, like there's something wrong with you, like you somehow chose to have your brain work in a particular way. And the fact of the matter is, we've grown up a great deal in understanding mental health and the influences behind human behavior. And it doesn't absolve us from actions. We still have to make decisions when people behave in abhorrent ways and ways that are run counter to our values within a given society. So we still have to be prepared to deal with that. What I think we can put more emphasis on in terms of education is better training across the board, and I mean for all of humanity, not just teachers and educators, but everyone, to know what is available when they start to see certain types of signs that might give indications of mental instability. Now, with the Las Vegas shooter, my understanding is that there was no forewarning.
You
That
got
there
it.
was nothing
That's
that
it.
indicated.
Exactly. This guy, no criminal record,
Yeah.
no pattern or reputation of this. So that's really perplexing to people.
Hmm.
No smoke before the fire.
Exactly. And we as a society are pretty much defenseless against that. There's no forewarning. There's no
Yeah.
way anybody, right? You hear about
Right.
some shooters, and then they interview families, and then you find out, yeah, this guy was a ticking time bomb. I mean, this guy, he showed signs that he was capable of doing something like this.
Let me get not to. You and I have a lot to talk about, but I would like to tie into your book here because I think there's something important, right?
All right.
There is a problem that I think you're trying to help us solve with the book. We have become unable in this country to disagree and get along and still stay at the barbecue. There were
Hmm.
more people taking their kids, grabbing their beach chair. I had a kid the other day, he didn't want to leave, but you could see he was sitting strategically to avoid being drawn in. And I said, my God. I said, you're sitting over here by yourself? He goes, yeah, it's all right. He goes, there's a bunch of liberals sitting over there. I said, but you don't want to sit with them? He says, nah. He says, he says, I don't want to start anything. I don't want to accidentally. I go, and so you're worried about upsetting it? Was I might, all I got to do is say one wrong thing. I said, you're very considerate. I said, and you're
Right.
sitting over here on your own rock. I said, you deserve to be at the party with the sandwiches and the day. He goes, that's all right. I'm having a good time. Hey, kid was so nice. And again, young, me,
Yeah.
a kid, someone in his 20s or whatever he was, but looked young enough to be sensitive to this. I was like, holy Toledo, we need what you're writing about. So the book is called 6 Steps to Better Thinking, How to Disagree and Get Along. All right, have at it, doctor. We really want this prescription.
Well, the first thing the book sets out are the basic skills for critical thinking, and it starts with the ways in which we can formulate our ideas, so we're better understood, so that we're heard, and we avoid a lot of wasted time and energy where we're just talking past each other. So there's a lot of emphasis on how to structure your thoughts and opinions, so that people can better, basically understanding, what it is that you're saying. They might not agree with it, but at least if they can better understand it so that there's less confusion, that's pretty much half the battle. And then the next steps consider things like human biases, like how often